Ro Khanna or Thomas Massie seem to be I'm not saying they're not partisan, but they seem to be a little more stable. And to see them like just coming out and be like, here's names of people, like that's really dangerous shit. The Ro Khanna, Thomas Massie story where they pressured the like exposure of these four names that ended up not being whatsoever connected to Epstein. In fact, they were just happened to be four pictures and names that were put in a lineup, right? Regarding Epstein. So it would be the equivalent of this, right? Imagine that me and you, they're like, hey, you want to make an extra $20? Can we take your picture and put you in a lineup, with the guy that's actually guilty? Sure, why not? Right? And then all of a sudden, 20 years later, it's like, Ryan and Rob are in connection with this serial killer. It's like, no, you just used our photo in a lineup. We have no idea who that guy is. We were never in a room with him. We had nothing to do. That's in effect what happened. And I think before we get to that, what I wanted to take this Brian Shapiro post to show was, I think you're starting to see some of the rationale behind Trump. And even though I'm not a big fan, Pam Bondi, and a lot of that side's arguments like, now, wait a minute. We have to be careful releasing these files because what are the file? I've asked this of myself. I've asked this to my audience. Like, I wanted the files released. That's true. But what did I mean by the files? I think I meant business connections, direct communications with Epstein, direct proof that people were engaged in terrible. I don't know that I meant anytime anyone made any accusation in the past 20 years, even if it was totally unsupported, even if it was just an anonymous call to some newspaper or law enforcement, I want that name released. Like, that seems to be too much. And I think you're starting to see sort of the fruits of that, well, if we do that, the public is not geared to being nuanced. So many people are going to say, I don't like this person. Oh, there's their name? Fuck them. Guilty. They've done the worst things. And I think that you're exactly seeing that. I think Brian Shapiro exemplifies that. Proof be damned. I don't need proof. There's a name I don't like. Fuck them. They did the worst things. And I think it's sad that we've gotten to this point, and I can understand the apprehension to release a lot of these files because of that.
Well, I mean, look, for lawyers who work in this area, this is no surprise. Like, there's an illusion that there was a thing called the Epstein files. That was never there. There's no such thing. What there is millions and millions and millions of documents. Millions of documents. If you've never worked on discovery, it's hard to imagine this, but you'll see the same email. Matt, you have an email thread? Well, that's not one document. That's 10. Because every email is a different,
adds to it, yeah.
Yeah, so you millions of documents. And not all of them mean anything. Right? Like, let's say that you, Rob, were drunk one night in 2013 and you called the FBI in a drunken stupor. Of course, this didn't happen. And you said, FBI, I saw Epstein in my backyard and he was selling children. They're going to write down your name. They're going to write down the tip. They're going to file it. They're never going to follow up on it because it's nonsense. It's an uncorroborated tip. But now that would be released in the Epstein files because the whole file's getting released. Now, disclaimer here. This was a known thing. So Trump shouldn't have run on releasing these and they shouldn't have advertised it. Like, it was a huge mistake because they should have known better. But the truth is, there's a reason why law enforcement doesn't release investigative files typically, because it's a lot of mess. It's going to make a lot of people get dirtied up. But if they had a case, they would have brought the case. Right? Like, the idea that there's a new criminal prosecution coming out of these files is very low probability. If they could have bring a case now, why didn't they bring it 4 years ago, 8 years ago? They've had the files. So ultimately, yeah, it's going to be a lot of smoke. A lot of people are going to get dirtied up. And it's probably going to amount to mostly that. There's going to be some people who get embarrassed. I forgot there's a financier who resigned recently. So there's some people, yeah. There's going to be some people whose connections to Epstein are going to be exposed and they're going to face social pressure and they might get canceled. They might lose their company. They might X, Y, and Z. But I don't think it's going to lead to prosecutions, would be my guess.
Well, and like I see Imaginarium saying, well, yes, but they intentionally didn't bring cases because they're corrupt. Even if that's true, then the question would be, one, do you think they kept the files that prove that? Right? The very institution, the FBI at this point that's covering up for known PDFs, kept the, and they're like, shit, oh shucks, here's the videotapes. Sorry, we helped cover it up. But no, like, and so what's going to be released anyways? Is it going to include that stuff? And I sympathize, right? It sucks seeing powerful people get away with shit. And part of the files I really like the communications that don't necessarily have to do with sex trafficking, but are very elucidating on prominent people and the business and political connections that Epstein had all over the world. It's interesting. And even if it doesn't rise to the level of criminal, like, for example, one issue, this Mendelsohn guy who was the ambassador from the United Kingdom to the United States. I mean, there's shit in there from Gordon Brown's tenure where, like, 5 minutes after he's given access to confidential business, like political communications between the United Kingdom and the United States, he's on the horn with Epstein, like, okay, here's what you need to do. Pressure this PM, pressure this congressperson. That shit's interesting, even if it's not a crime. It's interesting, and I think that I'm glad we see that. But what happens is that then there's a lot of cannon fodder that gets brought up. And so this brings us to the Thomas Massie Ro Khanna. In this particular situation, what we have is this. There's a file that they're looking at that's redacted, has redacted names. And they're wagging their fingers saying, these names are powerful people that are probably connected to like some nefarious shit. We demand unredacting. We demand unredacting. And the law they passed is quite clear. You have to unredact it. So the DOJ finally says, fuck it, here you go. And they unredact. Well, these are like no name, these aren't even fucking wealthy, powerful people. They're no name people that had no connection. One of these gentlemen I heard, I don't know if this is true, but this is what I heard. He got fired. He was a mechanic, right? Like, imagine just being some fucking like Joe Schmo mechanic. And all of a sudden you go into work and you're like, you fucking dirtbag, you were on Epstein's Island, you did this and that, and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? And Ro Khanna reads your name, right? And then all of a sudden, now this guy's retained a lawyer. Apparently he got hired back, and like but is there a potential at this point? Because I know you have the speech and debate clause that like basically is a congressperson, and you can talk about that for a second if you want, but is there a potential civil case that goes beyond that where it's like, yeah, criminally you can't be held as a congressperson for saying what you want, but civilly possibly you could get sued?
That's an interesting question. So my first question is, did they read it on the floor, right? It wasn't like they just had a press conference. They read it on the floor?
I believe so, yes.
So this is not an area of deep expertise on it, so I'm going a little off the top, but I actually think I think you're going to be immune from civil damages too. I don't think that I think the speech and debate clause is going to extend even to a civil lawsuit for damages for defamation or whatnot, because, if you remember when, what's her name? God, I'm blanking. One of the Republican Burnett who's always posing with AK-47s.
Oh,
Bobber?
No, or Mace.
God, I'm blanking.
I know who you're talking about.
I'm blanking. But she remember she went on the floor and then she read this thing about how one of her exes was sexually inappropriate with her and gave this whole public statement. And the reason she does it on the floor is that it insulates her from potential liability in case she said something that wasn't true or whatnot. And of course they give you media attention as well. But yeah, my understanding is that this is probably going to be an absolute bar of immunity, though I haven't researched it, so I could be wrong.
It's crazy. It's really is crazy. Even aside from that, though, whether or not there'll be legal ramifications, it sort of shows. And look, there are those Congress people, right, that you expect this more from. Like you could see Maxine Waters or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Nancy Mace. You're like, but like Ro Khanna or Thomas Massie seem to be I'm not saying they're not partisan, but they seem to be a little more stable. And to see them like just coming out and be like, here's names of people, like that's really dangerous shit. Like it really can negatively affect someone's life. So you want to be sure. By the way, this is true even not from a legal sense. Yeah. I said this during the whole Pizzagate shit, right? Where it was like, listen, you have to be real fucking careful before you're making accusations like this about specific people. It's one thing to say, I in general believe that high-powered people are doing really fucked up shit, right? It's another thing to be like, this guy's doing it, right? Especially if it's not like a public figure. If it's just some random Joe Schmo, it's a mechanic. Fuck that guy. That guy did this. And if you're someone with an audience, like a congressperson or a media member, etc., and you say that shit, the power imbalance is such that that guy's going to have no ability to really defend himself, probably. And it could lead to a lot of horrible negative consequences for people.
Well, I mean, I think we as a society need to get better at this. We need to figure something out because, look, the Epstein stuff is obviously horrifying. It's obviously salacious. It's obviously going to get a lot of attention. And anytime you accuse someone of sexual impropriety, it's always that way. But we've seen now that a lot of these accusations don't hold up to scrutiny. Did you ever watch the show Leverage?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, that was a guilty pleasure show with me and my wife. It's a fun, heisty type show. A lot of fun. In Leverage, Timothy Hutton was the lead. And he did a great job. He kind of held the cast together. He's a very, very good actor. They rebooted the show. They had the reboot, and he wasn't in it. And the show was terrible without him. Why wasn't he in it? Well, he had been accused of horrible sexual crimes in Canada. Horrible, graphic, evil crimes. Now, it turns out that when it was investigated, the Canadian police said there is absolutely no evidence supporting this, and they dismissed the charges. But by the time the news cycle had turned, right, and now he's a vicious sexual criminal, and he doesn't get his show, and he's done. He's canceled. It's over. And the accusation is headline news. The retraction is page 36. And 10 months later, and nobody cares. And that is a problem right now because people can get a lot of attention by essentially putting, PDF jackets or similar labels on people. And, we're seeing that time and time again that these accusations, sometimes it's true, but a lot of the time they don't hold up.
So here's exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not trying to single out this person, but this is the mentality. If they're innocent or the claim has no merit, just unredact the names. Why redact the name? You see, if you didn't do anything, who gives a shit if your name shows up in the files? Then you could just calmly say, oh, but I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. And everyone will go, oh, fair enough. That's not how it works, right? And that's why a lot of people are fighting. It's the same with the Diddy files to a lesser extent, right? Like, there's probably going to be the vast majority of people that ever were like at a party with Jeffrey Epstein didn't do shit. Not only did they not do anything sexually, they probably didn't even have business relationships or anything with them. It's just like a social acquaintance or something of that nature. The problem is that at this point, two things are true at the same time. One, this was a rich, powerful man that did some really fucking heinous shit, and he got away with it for a long time. And people have reason to distrust our system, in part because of that, but for a bunch of other reasons. And secondly, there's a lot of people that are going to be named that didn't do anything, particularly of these sexual crimes, right? How do we reconcile that? Because what the tendency is going to be from people on all sides, and look, it's way worse on the Democrats, in my opinion, but the same's true of the other side, right? Like right now, if it comes out, if there's an accusation, for example, against Barack Obama specifically, every fucking right-winger's going to go, oh, look at that. Look what happened. Now, it doesn't matter if you get into the finer details of that and it says this was an anonymous tip to the FBI, right? Doesn't matter. The right's going to be like, oh, there it is. There it is. And it's like, that's bad enough, but you understand it for Trump, Obama, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, George Bush. But when you're talking about Jim Smith, the auto mechanic, it's like, what the fuck are we doing? And I think that not only is it dangerous for them, but I think what happens is people like me start seeing it like this, and this is also the wrong reaction. Holy shit, there's so much fucking bullshit to sift through. I don't even have the stomach for it. So if there is a kernel of like, look at that, deep in these millions of files, here it is. Here's somehow something that you're like, wait a minute, this is a person that should have been prosecuted. But it gets lost in the shuffle because to get there, you have to sift through 200 names. It's just like, well, here was a name. And so it's, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what do you say? To me, I find it very similar to the like, well, if you're not guilty, who gives a shit if your name's read? It's very similar to the like, who needs a right to privacy? If you got nothing to hide, who gives a shit, right? Who cares if the government's reading your emails? You didn't do anything criminal, did you? No, we value that sort of privacy and not being speared in this way because in itself, that is something that we should have a right to. It's not just, well, if you're innocent, you shouldn't give a shit about it.
Well, I mean, look, if you took that guy I forgot his name, right? But if you went on X and you were like, that guy fucks pigs and I have proof, right? And then he quoted that proof, I don't fuck pigs. How do you think the rest of his day is going to go?
Yep.
You know, like it's good. Like you, at a certain point, the accusation is damaging in and of itself, especially when you're talking about really heinous stuff like what Epstein was involved in. But this is why I think that the Epstein files are going to end up. Look, I said it earlier. We got into this mess because there were promises made, and then they tried to walk it back, and then that prompted, congressional action. And now we're in a universe where the law requires disclosure, but it's never going to be enough. It's never going to be enough. I'm telling you right now, this is going to be our generation's JFK, right? Like this is going to be the thing. Like the people who say no, because like if you're one of the people who say no, the reason no other charges were brought is because there were people behind the scenes wielding power and influence. Okay, you might be right, by the way. I don't know. I can't tell. I don't know. But how could I ever prove you wrong is my actual question. And the answer is I can't. Like if they released all the Epstein files, then it's going to be like, well, what did they hold back? What's the thing and it ultimately becomes everybody picks their favorite theory and no amount of evidence will change their mind. Like Brian Shapiro doesn't fucking care about the evidence. He made it very clear he doesn't care about the evidence, right? And like, for example, like one of the things that came out in the Epstein file was that Trump turned Epstein into the police in 2006. So he said, thank God you've caught him. He's doing all these horrible things. Did that change anybody's mind?
Nope.
No. If you think Trump was on Epstein Island doing bad things, you still do. If you think Trump wasn't, you still don't. No, it doesn't change anybody's mind. It's just one more data point for people to ignore.
And I think it's a lesson in this. Like, it's sort of, when we started this show, one of the things Ryan and I talked about was this. Like, I'm more on the side of like, fuck it, tear it all down. Ryan's more on the side of like, look, we also have to focus on building back up, right? If you see a house and it's decaying, right? It's condemned. In order to build a good house there, you first have to like get down to the foundation, demolish to the foundation, and then build back up. And so I'm usually coming at things from more the like demolish it, and Ryan of like, that's fine, but you can't go too far and you have to worry about building it back up. I think this sort of speaks to the dangers of my ideology sometimes, which is like, look, if you just go in and you kick down the doors and you're like, fuck it, we don't care, things are so corrupt. Well, that leads to bills like Massie and Rokan's, right? And good will come out of that. I think there are good things that we're seeing out of it. But there are estimations that there's some like 350 million files. Right? Now think about that. Like you were saying, because a file might, if me and Ryan have a 20 email exchange, that's 20 files. There's the first one, then there's his response to me and the first one, then there's my response to that, then his response. You see, each of those are an individual file. If there are 350 million, right, this is apparently like what Massie and Rokana's like defense to this is. Well, the FBI and Pam Bondi and company should have came to us and said, here's why that name specifically is redacted. Okay, 350 million files worth of that? Every time you go through something, you're like, there's a blacked out name. I demand a meeting with Pam Bondi right now. Why the fuck on file 2,173,386? 3 sentences down, is there a name redacted? Who the fuck's that? We demand to know right now. And you start to see the insanity of this. You're like, holy fuck. So when their bill's just like, fuck it, unredacted all, okay. And then when you read their names out loud like Rokana and then go, well, it's not our fault. It's Pam Bondi's fault. She should have explained to us exactly who these people were as we were demanding and basically accusing her of helping cover up for Epstein by having these names redacted. Is there a potential? I mean, I wouldn't put it beyond Bondi and company. I'd understand why they do it, but I wouldn't put them beyond it to be like, okay, motherfucker, fine. Then we'll release these names, assholes. Now how do you feel? Right? And then them going, but this was malicious. Maybe so. But it sort of highlights the point where it's like, look, this is the dangers of just being like, fuck it. Convention be damned. And there are laws on the book. Correct me if I'm wrong. Or at least if not laws, judicial norms. They're like, look, in these instances where you have like a grand jury and evidence and charges aren't brought, you don't release the evidence to the public because of this exact scenario.
Oh, they never release. Like, if they don't bring charges, they never release the evidence of the investigation. Like the investigatory file is kept private for exactly this reason, that it's hugely embarrassing to people to have their names linked to these scandalous events, especially if there is not sufficient evidence to bring criminal charges, right? Now, will good come out of this? Yeah, I think we'll probably find some people who deserve to be shamed and deserve to have their name dragged through the mud. But a lot of bad's going to come out of it. We're going to have people who are dragged through the mud for no reason. Like you said, like Rob, imagine, because I've done this before in my line of work. Imagine there's that email exchange you were talking about, right? It's 10 levels deep, so there's 10 copies. But email servers back things up in duplicate and triplicate. It's on your phone. It's also on your Gmail. It's also on your laptop, right? So it's on my phone and my Gmail and my laptop. So it's actually 60, right? Now, every time the name shows up, you have to redact the name. But humans, AI, whatever tools you use, errors are made. What if you forget to redact the name on the 59th? And then somebody goes, oh, Sam Klein, that motherfucker. Look, they forgot to redact his name. I've got the story of the century. And they talk about Sam Klein in the Epstein file. And then he turns out, he's Epstein's plumber. And, and now, now he's going to have that experience. So, there's going to be real harm to real people because of this norm being altered in this case. But quite frankly, it was at a, tensions were at a breaking point. I don't know what else there was to do. People were so sick and tired of this being a political football and the way that it was promised and then taken away from them, that something had to give. I think this is going to be a shitty process, and it's going to play out in a shitty way. And that's going to be what it is. It's just going to be shitty for a while.
Ultimately, I think more good than bad will come out of it. I do. I think that I do err on the side of these corrupt motherfuckers will protect each other, and that there's, even if not evidence of sexual improprieties, there is evidence that in governments around the world that there's way too much influence with shitty people like Epstein. Right? Actually, to be honest with you, I'm more interested in that.
Me too. If you can catch anybody, you can prosecute them, of course, do it. But what I really want to know, because Epstein was not he was a sexual deviant and a motherfucker, but that was really that's his hobby. His business was information and influence peddling. And remember that video we saw where he called the representative from the Virgin Islands when she was on the floor of the Senate and Congress, and had her read what he texted her during a hearing. So this is a man with substantial influence. The thing I'm waiting to hear about is less the names, though I understand why people are interested in that, and more what it was his web of influence. Who did he have his fingers in? That's what I think is really interesting. But maybe that'll be a year or two down the road once the initial scandals blow over.
And there's, I've been talking about this a lot. There's a lot of different things in the files. I don't know how much stake to put in, even if it's someone I immensely dislike. Like, I have no love for Joe Biden. If a file comes out that's like, Jane Doe reported to the FBI's tip that Joe Biden did these heinous things, to women on the island, I don't know what I could do with that. I'm just like, it's just a fucking accusation with no proof. But when we see emails directly from Jeffrey Epstein to, Reid Hoffman or to Noam Chomsky or to Prince Andrew, it's like, okay, this is more interesting. This is, even if not the level of a crime, it's like, okay. Now, by the way, it doesn't mean that Epstein's telling the truth, right? Epstein could have got pissed at, me because he don't like the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he saw me talk about the Steelers and be like, yeah, I heard Rob Noer's piece of shit that murdered someone in Puerto Rico. It doesn't mean I murdered someone in Puerto Rico. He could be full of shit or mistaken, but at least there's something there that's more than just accusation and innuendo. It's like, all right, there's something here, at least that this dude, so I agree with you. I think there is different levels of stuff to get out of these files, and partisanship be damned. I don't give a fuck, right? Like if it's right wingers or Trump or whatever, fine. But some of the shit, it's like, it's so easy to jump in with both feet to this. I saw Michael Tracy talking about this. There was this one file where, I'll be very careful here, I don't want to violate TOS. A prominent person, there's an email, and if you just look at this chunk of the email, it's like, says something to the effect like 7-8 years old, accused me of making a certain part of their body bleed. And everyone's like, holy fuck, a 7 or 8 year old? Well, then what this was from a court transcript where a gentleman's lover, adult lover, girlfriend he'd been with a while, tried to sue him and lost, and alleged abuse that had occurred 7-8 years ago. Right? So in context, you're like, oh, he's talking about a 7 or 8-year-old. No, he's talking about an accusation from 7-8 years ago that was tossed out by a court about his actions with an adult woman, right? But that's the sort of shit that happens. It's like, oh, fuck. Now, you know, and fuck this guy. I know who that guy. I'm not going to say it here because I'm not trying to smear more. It's not a guy I particularly like anyways. But nonetheless, you see the problem? You remember the famous one that came out where it was like Epstein said, you know, Trump's the dog that's not barking.
Yeah.
He was in a room with Redacted. Well, once you found out that Redacted was Virginia Giuffre, who had publicly said, Trump tried to help me, he did nothing wrong, right? All of a sudden that it's like, oh, Epstein's trying to figure out who ratted him out. And he's like, you know who we haven't heard from? Fucking Trump. And he was with one of the alleged victims. In other words, did he rat me out? And yet there were millions of people, including people that were like, hey, I'm kind of a Trump supporter. This is
and it turns out he did. He did rat him out.
And but in context, you were like, oh, this looks bad. And then when you see that, so it's like, man, it's so fucking bizarre